So sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. I have four big stories for you, and the first one is just bizarre. So, if I were to have told you a couple years ago that Ukrainians would have killed North Korean officers in Donbas, you would have thought I was nuts. But that's actually happened. Or if I told you that it was North Korea propping up Russia rather than Russia propping up North Korea, you'd be like, I don't think your fiction's very good. But this just happened. So let's look at this. Ukrainian armed forces eliminate six North Korean officers in Donbas, according to media reports. This is from UATV in English. More than 20 military personnel killed as a result of a missile strike on October 3rd in the Russian-occupied territory near Donetsk, including six officers from North Korea who arrived for negotiations with their Russian colleagues. Okay, what are they doing there? Well, Russian sources described their presence as part of an exchange experience. Well, the experience has ended, but wow, like North Koreans on the ground in Ukraine. Okay, this is even worse, half of the approximately 3 million artillery shells used by Russia each year come from North Korea. Like, wait a minute. Russia, you're an arms producer to the rest of the world and you're importing these from North Korea? Okay. Now, what's happened to the Russian economy has been catastrophic. And the number of men that they've lost has caused them to have to pay huge amounts in order to attract more Russians into, well, not Russians, they could be ethnically something else, but more Russian citizens into the army. Within 1 year, one-time payments for Russian soldiers were almost multiplied by 6. Like, that's what they've had to do. They've had to be giving these great big sums in order to attract new soldiers. Putin's genocidal obsession with building USSR 2.0 has gutted the Russian economy and likely set it on a path to collapse by the end of 2025. Now, I'm not the kind of person that's over here going, Russia's going to collapse tomorrow. It's all over. But I am seeing these signs and indicators that are just unhealthy. So I try to be balanced here, and let's look at one of the reports. This is Anders Osland, and I think he's making some fair observations. My own view is that the current sanctions regime shaves off 2 to 3% of GDP each year. Okay, sanctions alone don't do enough. I've said that. I've done a whole video on how sanctions alone don't work. They help, but they won't do the trick. Okay, regardless of the outcome on the battlefield, Russia will be the biggest loser. Wars are costly, and the Russian economy has grown by only 1% a year on average since it's illegally seized Ukrainian territory in 2014. Russian GDP has slumped from 2.3 trillion in 2013 to 1.9 trillion in current US dollars. No longer a superpower, Russia is what the late US Senator John McCain memorably called a gas station masquerading as a country. In fact, its unreliability has reduced its credibility as an energy supplier. The only sectors of the Russian economy that are growing are the military and related infrastructure. That's right. And they're having a hard time even backfilling their workers in the munitions factories because they're taking those to go to the front line. This is exactly what happened previously in the Soviet Union. Economists and journalists detected hidden annual inflation at about 3% per year. One indicator of this today is that the Russian central bank maintains an interest rate of 19%. Like, think about your 7% loan or your 5% loan in the US, 19%, while claiming that annual inflation is only 9.1%. Think about your 3% or 4% annual inflation rate. Nobody should believe such figures. At the same time, Russia's arms exports have collapsed because it needs all of them for its own use. No, they're still sending some out, like to Iran. Okay, much to its shame, the Kremlin has been forced to import artillery shells from its even more backward neighbor, North Korea. I just talked about that. Putin is also running out of soldiers. The U.S. estimates that 120,000 Russian soldiers have been killed, another 180,000 injured. This is an old estimation, and that only brings us up to 400,000 casualties, and it's probably north of 500,000. The Ukrainians say it's north of 600,000, but at least 500,000 I'm pretty confident in. I could even get behind 600,000 as a legit number. Including all the hidden costs, Russia will probably spend about 190 billion or 10% of GDP on the war this year. So I believe it'll be more than that. By comparison, Ukraine has held Russia to a stalemate by spending about 100 billion per year on the war, half from its own budget, half in kind through arms donated from abroad. And if you look at the bizarrely small amount of real estate that Russia has acquired this year and how many people were lost, I just don't understand how it's worth it. So let's turn to the next story. Former NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg admitted that his biggest regret during his tenure was the delayed delivery of military aid to Ukraine. He emphasized that more advanced support could have significantly bolstered Ukrainian defenses. Now, what Ukraine is suffering right now in the lack of being able to generate adequate electricity or the damage to civilian infrastructure is a direct result of not being able to supply them with the air defense that they needed earlier on. And they're paying, you can like pay now or pay later, but you tend to pay a lot more later if you don't pay right up front. And had the Western partners paid a lot more attention to what was going on and paid up front, a lot of what has happened wouldn't have happened. Even Macron can't believe Biden's shocking level of weakness on Ukraine. He cites the double standard in defending Israel, but not Ukraine. There is a double standard. I talked about that yesterday. And just think about it's been, 6 months since Congress, who took way too long to approve that package, passed that package. And they were supposed to allow ATACMS to be used even in Russia. That's the congressional plan. And Biden has been the one pulling the brake here. It's bizarre to watch. Now, Stoltenberg also said that Ukraine could become a NATO member even with the occupied territories. Well, it's easier to say once he's out of office, but he was saying some things along these lines before in his defense. As an example, he cited East and West Germany. That was a model, right? Now, he said that there are ways to resolve the issue of NATO's Article 5, but you have to have the political will in order to do that. Ukraine has the right to defend itself, and that doesn't end at the border, says Mark Rutte. The only country that here has crossed the line is not Ukraine. It is Russia by starting the war. It's absolutely spot on about that. Now, as we're talking about the comparison between Ukraine and Israel, this was an interesting observation. Where are the protests that demand that Arabs give the Kurds a state? The Kurds were our best friends. They fought with us as allies. Whatever happened to the Tibetan independence movement? Instead of obsessing over giving Arabs who have 21 states 22nd or 23rd, why not focus on actual stateless peoples who deserve self-determination? Like maybe some people here who have been dominated by the Russian Empire over time and absorbed against their will, like Chechnya. And while we're talking about Chechnya, Kadyrov's son was included in the Book of Russian Records. But what did he do? He was just recognized as the youngest head of the security service of the head of a constituent entity of Russia. A constituent entity of Russia means one of these ethnic groups that has been absorbed by Russia. Okay, so let's read about this. So Anton Gerashenko tells us that the mechanism of hereditary transfer of power continues to take shape in Chechnya. Adam Kadyrov has been recognized as the youngest head of the security service. Razman Kadyrov was head of the service under his father, Akhmat Kadyrov. The award ceremony took place during an MMA tournament in Grozny. The Chechen leader's son commented on the award briefly, saying, quote, "We have no intention of stopping. Akhmat is a force." This is Adam Kadyrov's 11th award after beating someone in pretrial detention number of months, almost a year ago. Razman Kadyrov is making Adam his heir apparent. He has to have a military component, so he has to have at least titularly been in control of a military command. And then Razman himself, who gained de facto power in the Federation after his father's death, has created a real cult of Akhmat Kadyrov and trying to legitimize power through his line in Chechnya. And so promoting his 16-year-old son as his heir demonstrates his intention to remain at the head of the republic for at least another 10 years if he lives that long. Now, Adam is hardly capable of independently governing himself, so he'll be a puppet under his father, but he'll learn the ropes of dictatorship from him that way. Chechnya is fine-tuning the mechanism of hereditary transfer of power to a third generation of the ruling clan. And so he was given this award during an MMA tournament, I saw this and I thought, whoa, he's actually fighting in MMA? And no, it's no such thing. He's not doing that. Because I saw him standing here not looking like he's in the best shape with the blood on the ground. And yeah, okay. So that's the story with the Kadyrovs. Now I'll leave you with this. The Supreme Leader of Iran had Friday prayers for 40 minutes. Look at the banner. Am I going mad? Said the commentator. Look at this. Khomeini, the October 7th attack was logical and legal. So these guys are allied with Russia, and more bad things will happen between Russia and Iran and Syria and North Korea and China precisely because of what Ann Applebaum argues in Autocracy Inc. I just finished the book. It's awesome. I'll leave the link to that book below, and if you want to understand kind of what's going on in the world writ large, read that book. All right. Thank you for your time, my friends. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, the coffees. Thank you for being patrons and members. And thank you more than anything else for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.